Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupada. Today we will resume our discussion by studying mantra 9 of the Īśopaniṣad. Andam tamaha pravishanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya vidyayam rataha. Those who engage in the culture of nascent activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So with this we enter into the third section of the Īśopaniṣad. So the first section for mantra 1 and 3 talked about living in harmony with Krishna, the Īśopaniṣad principle, and the consequence for living without harmony, the Atmaha. And then in mantra 4 to 8, we had the vision of the Mahabhagavatam. We had the vision of Krishna filled with greatness, apparently contradictory qualities, and the best of all. Now in the third section, and this has 6 mantras, it gives the right and wrong practices and their goals. So verses 9 to 11 will talk about the right and wrong knowledge, the right and wrong vidya. Verses 12 to 14 will talk about the right and wrong upasana, which is people who are following the right vidya, who do they worship? And people who follow the wrong vidya, who do they worship? Right. So essentially, the 3 verses 12 to 14, they kind of are coupled with the 3 verses 9 to 12. Right? So 9 talks about the right and wrong knowledge, and 12 talks about what do they worship, and similarly for 10 and 11. And the final 4 mantras is a prayer to Krishna. Right? So today we will do mantra 9. So quick recap: in the first mantra, Īśopaniṣad spoke about Krishna, and Samadhiya also talked about the Īśopaniṣad principle, how to live in relationship with Krishna. In mantra 2, the Īśopaniṣad spoke about how does one live having understood the position of Krishna, right? which is living with the Īśopaniṣad principle, which is essentially living by performing activities with full detachment and dedication to the Lord. Then mantra 3 spoke about one who does not live in that way, who does not recognize the quota given to him by the Lord, and who owns proprietorship. Even if he recognizes the quota, he understands the quota to be his as opposed to the Lord, and he is described as Atmaha. So the killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. So mantra 9 is essentially an expansion of mantra 3. That mantra 3 talked about the consciousness of such persons. Mantra 9 talks about the pursuit of such persons, and mantra 12 will talk about the upasana or the object of worship of such persons. And so they are going to be expanding on the Atmaha. Similarly, mantra 2 is expanded in the people who do live in the proper consciousness. That will be further expanded in mantra 5 and in mantra 14. So the word that is in Atmaha in mantra 3 is actually in plural, killers of the soul. So that means there are different types of killers, right? So there is not just one particular practice that is considered to be detrimental to spiritual advancement, but there are many shades of it. And that's what we will say in mantra 9, 10, 11. And what are the shades of both knowledge and ignorance? So the key words in these three mantras are vidya and avidya, knowledge and ignorance. So these 6 mantras, in the first 3 mantras deal with vidya and avidya, and as we will see that it manifests itself as jnana and karma, right? So we'll derive this contextual application as we study the mantras. The second set of 3 mantras deal with sambhuti and asambhuti, which is the absolute or the relative, right? So those who are in vidya, they worship the absolute, which is the supreme lord, and those who are in avidya, they worship the relative, which is not the absolute lord. Could be the demigods, could be themselves, could be other great personalities, but not the supreme lord. Summary explanation of the mantra, that in the previous set of verses, there is a description of the greatness of Krishna as perceived by the devotees. Right? Now the attention turns to those who are not able to see the greatness of Krishna, or having seen it, reject it, or motivate others to reject it. Right? And what happens to them? Right? So this verse talks about the dangers of ignorance, that those who do not see the greatness of Krishna, or misdirected knowledge, that even when they are told about the greatness of Krishna, they reject it, or they actively go around creating confusion in the minds of others also. So it also talks about the dangers of performing karma and gyan with the exclusion of one another. Like karma without gyan is sense gratification, and gyan without karma, it's simply mental speculation. At the best, may lead to impersonalism. So Prabhupada in the purport, he first explains this apparent conundrum that why is vidya worse than avidya? Conventionally, knowledge is considered to be better than ignorance, right? Then avidyam upasate, right? He talks about the destination of those who are in this ignorance, and vidyadyam rata, the destination of those in so-called knowledge. And here he will talk about 3 kinds of people. He will talk about the modern education, which he says is the godless modern education. He will talk about the Vedvadrathas, which are the so-called followers of the Vedas, and the Mayapartha Gyanas. These are the followers of Vidyas who have been illusioned. Right? So we will cover each of these topics in our subsequent discussion. So what is Vidya and Avidya? And the reason this is spoken is because this interpretation is fluid. So what is Vidya and Avidya in this mantra is different from what is Vidya and Avidya in the next mantra and the next mantra. Right? That's why in the Īśopaniṣad and any of the Vedas, context is very important. Right? If you establish one meaning of Vidya and apply it to all the 3 mantras, you will get a completely different result. But the acharyas, they help us understand that the word is interpreted differently in the different mantras. So earlier on it was established that real Vidya is understanding the Īśavasya principle, that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. And the forgetfulness of Īśavasyam is considered to be avidya. In the context of this mantra, what it says as Vidya and Avidya are both avidya in the context of the Īśopaniṣad principle, right? So it's talking about people who are ignorant of the Īśopaniṣad principle. So both of them are practicing avidya, but within the avidya there are two categories: vidya and avidya, right? So even the vidya in mantra 9 is a subcategory of avidya. So vidya is then is so avidya is ignorance of the Īśopaniṣad principle, and vidya is a misunderstanding. That's why it's called so-called knowledge. So there is one category of people who simply ignore the Īśopaniṣad principle, that is avidya, right? And there is another category of people who claim to have knowledge of the Īśopaniṣad principle. So they misinterpret it, and while they claim to have vidya, they are actually in the as a subcategory of avidya, right? And Prabhupada says the profitless pursuit of sense gratification is the worship of avidya, avidyam upasate. Now, why is vidya worse than avidya? So, the reason, the mantra says that those who cultivate ignorance, so this is avidya, they go down. Andham tama. Right? Andham means darkness, tama is the mode of ignorance. And then they say those who cultivate knowledge, they even go down further. Tatu bhuya iva te tamu. Right? So the destination of those who practice vidya is actually worse than those who practice avidya. Right? So the mantra is saying that while avidya or ignorance is dangerous, vidya or knowledge is even more dangerous when it is mistaken or misguided. So one who is in ignorance simply misleads himself, but one who is in knowledge can mislead others. Prabhupada gives the example of a cobra with a jewel, that if there is a regular cobra, then people know that this is a dangerous snake, let me stay away from it. That's the situation of one who is in ignorance. People know this person may be a fool, let me stay away from him. But a cobra with a jewel is very attractive. People are attracted to the jewel, they may approach it and the cobra will bite it. This is the situation of one with so-called knowledge. Because they do have that ornament of knowledge and they attract people, whether they're actively preaching or not. They may attract people just because they have that stature of being with knowledge, but essentially they are themselves full of ignorance. So avidya has the innocence of ignorance, but vidya has the malice of knowledge. And so when a child does some mistake, then there is not so much angst because of the innocence of the child. When the adult does the same mistake, then there is more angst that you should have known better. Right? So when a person in knowledge is misleading himself and others, it is worse than a person who is acting without knowledge. In vidya, there is potential, right? So there is also this harm to the self, that a person in avidya can be open to vidya, real knowledge. But a person in vidya will say, I already know. So this was experienced by people who are preaching in India right from the time of Srila Prabhupada, that preaching to the Smarta Brahmins was very difficult. Preaching to the others was relatively easy because they had an open heart. They chant Hare Krishna, yes. But when you start preaching to the Smarta Brahmins, they would come up with a whole list. I already do this, I do this, and the books that I read tell me this, and I come from a long line of practicing brahmanas, and we have all these rituals that we do, so we are fully satisfied. There's no need to tell us anything else, right? So they're not even open to change, because in addition to misleading others, they're also actively misleading themselves, right? So that is the danger of misdirect knowledge, that the person has potential. The person who are smarta brahmans, they do a lot of rituals, and they live in the mode of goodness. They follow parts of the Vedas from here and there, some of them culturally, but all that effort is wasted. Prabhupada says it's like decorating a dead body. So this is a kind of a visual description of Vidya and Avidya. So those who do not follow the Ishavasyam, they come in two categories. One is the Avidyayam Upasati. Right? So these are people who are ignorant of the Ishavasyam principle. Right? So they are, what we said is, they are innocently ignorant. They don't even know about its existence. And these are those who are following karma without gyan. Right? So they're called Muras in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this category, you have two subcategories. You have the karmis, who are karma kanda, that they're following karma, but not, they may be living piously, but they're not getting any purification out of it, because there is no aspect of gyan. So gyan over here, whenever you see gyan in spoken in the Vedic context, 99% of the time it will refer to Atma Gyan, the knowledge of the self, that I am not the body but the soul. Of the remaining 1%, 9 times out of 10, it will refer to Brahma Gyan, which is knowledge of the spirit, and very, very rarely, and in cases, it will refer to knowledge of the Paramatma or Krishna, and in those cases, it will most probably be also qualified with the proper adjective. But when we talk about the karmis, the karmakandis, they lack atmagyan. Right? So their main focus is to enjoy piously, and then there are the vikarmis who even ignore the injunctions of the Vedas in terms of performing activities. So they are vikarmis, grossly sinful. Then there is the Vidyayam Rataha, that those who follow the so-called knowledge. So Rath, as you know, is chariot, and Vidyayam is so-called knowledge. So those who are on the chariot of the, or following the path of so-called knowledge. Here under this we have three categories. So they follow false knowledge, right? So they say they are following knowledge, but it is essentially material knowledge, right? So their cultivation of knowledge is how best to exploit the material nature for your enjoyment. How to build bigger houses and more comfortable lodgings, how to enjoy more, right? So essentially, they're exclusively following material pursuits. The second category is those who are ignorant but claim knowledge, right? So these are the scientists. So the scientists may not be absorbed in gross material pursuits, but essentially their definition of knowledge is only in understanding material nature, right? The first one, their focus is in enjoying material nature. The scientists, they take one step back and try to understand material nature, right? So they come up with all these theories and all these rules, but they're all limited to trying to explain the interaction of the various material energies. Right? So they're ignorant, but they claim knowledge. Yes, now we have knowledge of what an atom is made of. Yes, now we have knowledge about how these two chemicals react. Then the third are those who are ignorant, but they claim knowledge, but they also criticize those with real knowledge. Right? So the scientist, they limit their purview to the interaction of the material energy, and what they don't know beyond that they don't speak about. But then there are those who, despite being ignorant, will claim knowledge and use that knowledge to criticize the followers of real knowledge. And so under this we have, and this is derived from Bhagavad Gita, the chapter 7th, where Krishna talks about the four kinds of people who do not worship him. So we have the atheists, which is the Naradhamas, right? So the atheists, they speak extensively, but they use that knowledge to deny the existence of God, right? There is the Vedvadrata. The Vedvadrata are karmis. They are similar to the Karam Kandis that were spoken in the as those who are avidyam upasate, but the difference is that not only do they follow the materialistic aspect of the Vedas, they also actively reject the other aspects of the Vedas, right? So they develop more knowledge than just Karma Kand, but they use that additional knowledge to misdirect other people, saying that this is all that there is. That the Vedas is essentially meant for enjoyment, like the philosophy of Charvak Rishi. He realized he basically discounts all the theistic aspect of the Vedas. And then there is the Mayapartha Jnanas, whose knowledge is illusion, and amongst them we have the Brahmavadis who are pursuing the impersonal aspect of the Lord, and the Mayavadis who are pursuing the rejection of the personal aspect of the Lord. Right? So this is mostly based on the distinctions that have been expanded upon by Srila Prabhupada in his purport. Right? In a general way, we have two categories: karma without gyan and gyan without karma. So there are two destinations that are given in this verse. So we have established that both the vidya and avidyas do not follow upasate, right? So there is the avidyam upasate who are ignorant, and there is the vidyayam ratha who have so-called knowledge. So the avidyam upasate, their destination is andam taba pravashanti, which is essentially repeated birth and death. Right? And Prabhupada says three places for them. They can go to the lower species where their consciousness is covered. They can go to hellish planets, andam tama. Hellish planets are subterranean, so there is no light over there. And the andam tama pravishante can also talk about the fact that their knowledge is covered with ignorance. Now those who are so-called knowledge, the Vidyadhyamrata, their destination is tato bhuja iva titamo. Right? So even a worse destination than the tama pravishanti spoken about the avidyas, and their destination is neither liberation nor purification nor enjoyment. Right? So if you look at it, that those who are innocently ignorant, at least they're enjoying. But those who are in this, who have knowledge, they try to follow some kind of rules and regulations. They try to regulate themselves, so they limit their enjoyment. Now those who are innocently ignorant, at least if they are karma kandis, they are being purified. So even when they are exploiting the Vedas just for material purpose, the fact that they are following the Vedas Even though it's just the Karam Kand part, they are being purified. But these people, the Vidya Dhyamrata, there is no purification for them, because they are not sincerely following the regulatory principles of the Veda, right? So they're contaminated by the sins of rejecting the Veda and need the liberation, right? Because uh, they're they're actively moving in another path, so no liberation for them. So avidyam upasate, in the Vishnu Puran, avidya is equated with karma, right? So there it is said that there is a third energy called avidya or karma, right? And their suffering is because of their absorption in artha dharma kam without moksha, no liberation for them. Then in the Mundak Upanishad, the continual suffering of those engaged only in karma, right? This is avidya is repeated janma karma jara vyadi, repeated birth, death, disease, and old age, right? So as I mentioned, those who are performing karma without atma gyan, so these are pious karmis, or they are outright vikarmis, they are sinful. Right? Prabhupada says that such people are like asses, mura, and kind of speaks a little bit more on the metaphor that the asses carry a load that does not belong to them. Right? Similarly, these people in ignorance, they carry the load of material enjoyment, they carry the load of taking care of the body, which does not belong to them or temporarily belongs to them. Then they carry the load for grasp, which is available anyway, right? So the mudas and their Prabhupada is mostly talking about asses that are used by, traditionally in India, the washermen used ashes to carry heavy loads of clothes. And after working very hard the whole day, then the asses would be led to a field and they would eat the grass over there. So the grass was always there. It's not that the washerman created grass. He doesn't buy them. So the asses were available, but the asses think that if I work hard the whole day, then I'll get the grass. So similarly, by the Ishavasa principle, Krishna has already provided for everyone to live as per the quota. But just to get that quota, the asses or the muras, they work very, very hard. The asses by nature are very stubborn, right? And similarly, the materialists are difficult to preach to because of their absorption in the material conception. And then Prabhupada talks about this interesting way that the washermen would motivate the asses. They would take a carrot and tie it in front of them. So the asses would run after the carrot, and of course, as they ran, the carrot also moved. But still, they would run. So this is the materialist, that their goals keep changing. So there's no real material satiation. That when you get something, then your goal becomes something else, and then you work equally hard to get that goal, and the goal moves away. Then reacts favorably to be beaten. The asses, they would stop knowing that they would be beaten, and after beating they would start again. So this is the nature of the materialist, that they will interact with the material world, knowing experientially themselves and seeing around them that it is just resulting in suffering, but they will continue to do so. And finally, the asses, they are so consumed in the desire for sex that the female asses will kick them in their mouth repeatedly, and they will bear all that pain and the kicking and the humiliation just for a little bit of sex. So that's what the materialists are also doing. Then Vidya Rata, right? For the previous verse for the avidya, this is for the so-called knowledge. So they study the Vedas, right? So Vidya means that the study of the Vedas, uh, and there are two kinds of Vidya: Jad Vidya, which is the study of matter. Jad means that which cannot move, and Brahma Vidya, which is that which can move, essentially that of living and non-living. So, Jad Vidya is either the study of that which cannot move or the movement of the objects that cannot move, right? So you study a stone or you study the rolling of the stone. Both of them are equally useless. Brahma Vidya is the knowledge, the studies of what moves these objects. When the stone is rolled, then the pursuers of Brahma Vidya will look at the hand of the person that is causing the stone to move. So, Vidya is the study of in this context, is to study the movement without studying the cause of the movement, right? If there's a rock that is moving, they will focus completely on that, why is this rock moving with so much speed in this direction? But they will not study the cause of the movement. So similarly, the scientists, they study a lot about the material world around them, the various laws of physics and chemistry and quantum physics, but they do not study who put all these laws in place. What causes matter to behave in this way? They may study the behavior of matter, but not the hand that is causing the matter to behave in this way. So it is condemned because they are ignorant of the actual purpose of the Vedas. And Prabhupada says because of the sin of disobeying the acharyas. So typically these so-called uh, pursuers of knowledge, they reject the parampara and they try to speculate independently. So the real purpose of knowledge is to know Krishna. Right? Krishna says in 15:15 that I am to be known by the Vedas. But the Vidyayam Rata, they misdirect by misinterpreting the Vedas, right? So these are the Vedvad Ratas that say that the Vedas are only talking about Karma Kand, right? Mam imam pushpitam vacham pravadante avapashyata, right? So they say that essentially all that the Vedas talk about is enjoy piously. So they know the Vedas, but they reject the Vedanta, or they don't care about the Vedanta. So they're similar to the karmis or simple fools, but they're more condemned because they have more potential. The simple fools don't even study the Vedas, the karmis. These people study the Vedas, but then they misdirect themselves and others by the partial study of the Vedas. And the Maya Partha Jnana are the impersonalists. They are Jnanis who do not come in the Guru Parampara, and they lead to different forms of atheism that will be described in Mantra 12. Right? So the mundane scientists, they follow the pursuit of knowledge that has no real benefit. Right? So they are also considered dangerous. So one would say, why are they not in the category of being innocent? So they are dangerous. One is because they have that jewel of knowledge that is attracted. Right? Like Prabhupada gave the example of a cobra with a jewel. So they have the jewel of knowledge which is attractive, but it is useless knowledge. And they also use the knowledge to increase the temporary comforts in the material life, right? So they try to make the material life more enjoyable than it is. It's mentioned that in this material world, suffering is introduced to remind the soul about the existence of another world where there is no suffering. Like when criminals are put in jail, there is suffering over there, so they are motivated to come out of the jail and not do the same crimes again. And they are also motivated to somehow reduce the sentence and come out of the jail as soon as possible. So that's the role of the suffering. But what the scientists do is that they try to create a cocoon by reducing the sufferings of the material world. But what it does is that it leads to the people suffering even more by not pursuing a path out of the material world. So the Kurma Puran explains that this is not only people who cultivate an incomplete knowledge, but extends to those who do not condemn such people. Right? The Kurma Puran is taking a more wider explanation. So, so there are those who may not be in this pursuit. They may be people who are pursuing real knowledge, but the Kurma Puran says that if they are not condemning the people who are pursuing incomplete knowledge, they themselves should be considered to be in incomplete knowledge. Right? So it's the analogy of if a person is seeing somebody is walking towards the edge of a cliff, then the person might say laissez-faire, let the person do what he wants. But while the person himself is not walking to the end of the cliff, he is still condemned because he does not try to stop the other person, or people are following that person who are going to the edge of the cliff. So, at the end of the day, this mantra talks about karma and gyan, right? So, this verse condemns the exclusive performance of karma and gyan. So, the performance of karma without gyan is considered avidya, right? Simply mindless performance of activities, whether they are sukarma or vikarma. And again, gyan is atma gyan. So one who is not pursuing spiritual knowledge, knowledge of the self, and simply performing activities, that is considered avidya. Performance of gyan without karma is here considered vidya, which is simply speculating mentally but not performing any purificatory activities. Right? So you can recollect that these are the kind of people that Krishna condemns very, very well mentally in the Bhagavad Gita, beginning from the 3rd chapter. So karma without gyan, which is avidya, leads to repeated birth and death. Gyan without karma, at the best, leads to monism. Because if people are simply mentally speculated, they will either become Brahmavadis or Mayavadis. So, those who are pursuing karma without gyan, they are ignorant of the higher purpose of life and thus they are condemned. Those who are pursuing gyan without karma, they are convinced about the incorrect goal of life and therefore they are even more condemned because they are trying but they are moving in the wrong direction. So the implicit message is that karma and gyan should be performed together. Prabhupada talks about modern godless education. He says that to be ignorant is bad, which is the situation of the general populace. To be ignorant and claim to be knowledgeable is worse, which is the situation of scientists. Right? They say, yes, we are studying. But essentially all they are doing is they are studying the movement of a rock without studying the movement of that of the person that causes the rock to move, right? And then there are those who are ignorant, they claim to be knowledge and criticize those who are in knowledge. Right? So this is the worst, the bad, worst and worst. So these are the atheistic scientists. That not only are they absorbed in material pursuits, but they criticize those who are absorbed in spiritual pursuits. Sometimes they will call them superstitious or misguided or different labels that are applied to them. So Vedvad Ratha in Bhagavad Gita, there is a description of Vedvad Ratha. So this is the Imam Vishvitam Pushtitam Vacham Pravadante Upashyata Vedvad Ratha Partha. Right? Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities. Right? And desiring sense gratification, they say there is nothing more than this. So not only are they following material gratification, they go around telling everybody and themselves there is nothing more than this. Right? So they take stealing the real purpose of the Vedas, which is perform activities for purification so that you can then go to the next stage. Yeah. Then again in the 9th chapter, Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on pious heavenly planets where they enjoy godly delights. When they've enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the result of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to the mortal planet again. Those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. Right. So this is the consequence of one who is simply ignoring the real purpose of the Vedas. The mistake that they do is that they confuse the secondary message of the Vedas as the primary message. They may read the Vedas but not understand the Vedanta. And not only do they misinterpret the Vedas, they actively misguide other people. Tato bhuya evate tama. Right? So not only themselves they run those directions, they will hold classes, they will preach, or they will inspire others and say this is the way it is. People say why? Because the Vedas say, and they're misleading innocent people. Maya Partha Jnana. So these are the Brahmavadis who know the Brahman but not the Bhagwan. So in 12.5 Krishna says that those whose mind are attached to the unmanifest, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress is very difficult for those who are embodied. And then there are the Mayavadis who are even bigger offenders. That not only are they attracted to the impersonal, they actively reject the personal form of Lord. Right? They say Bhagwan is a temporary conditioned manifestation of the Brahman. Right? And Krishna is more heavy on them. He says, fools deride me when I descend to the human form. They do not understand my transcendental nature. In that dilute condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, their culture of knowledge, all is defeated. Right? So while they're pursuing what they feel is knowledge, that even that is defeated. Right? So Sanatana Dharma is the study of the Lord and his personal descent. But these Mayapartha Jnanis, their boon is becomes the bane. So bane means evil. So Krishna has given all these boons to us. He has given us the boons of the Vedas, the knowledge in the Vedas. He has given the boons of his own avatars performing Leela. But these Mayapartha Jnanis, they use all that and they come to a completely different conclusion. So materialism mistakes counterfeit to be real. Right? So somebody gives you $10, it's counterfeit, but you say that it is real. That it is material. Right? So contextually, it is those who consider the material activities as the essence of life. Right? So that is the nature of materialistic. Then monism, they mistake the real to be counterfeit. Like somebody gives you a $10 note, which is a real dollar, and you reject it, saying that I don't accept this. So their eternal spiritual activities are illusory. They study the Vedas, but they reject the real message of the Vedas, or they misinterpret the real message of the Vedas. So conclusion, so this verse talks about the destination of one who simply acts for sense gratification. This is avidya, karma without gyan. They attain repeated birth and death. And worse is those who cultivate so-called knowledge. So this is vidya. So vidya is, as we have said, vidya is knowledge. Either they cultivate knowledge of matter, or they cultivate knowledge in the Vedas, but in a wrong way. So they mislead themselves and they mislead the others. Right? They suffer more because they cause others to suffer, and they suffer more because they are doing more. They are working hard, but they are not getting the results. So that's why they are suffering more. So this brings us to the end of mantra 9. So next time we will discuss the other two forms of vidya and avidya. We will end over here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.